It's one thing to collaborate with brands as a creative, but the magic lies in leveraging those partnerships to grow your craft and explore more opportunities. The award-winning textile artist, designer, and founder of Lulasclan, Bonolo Chepape, had successful collaborations with brands such as Nando's, Smeg, Mr. Price, and many others. In this episode, she tells us how she did it and what she learned along the way. Bonolo shares insights for brands who are looking for creatives to work with. She also tells us how creatives can position themselves to get some of the opportunities they need to grow.
Even if, let's say, you hit a big collaboration, how does it propel your growth? Use it to propel your growth. Showcase, tell the story behind the collaboration consistently.
To help us reach more audiences and creators, share this episode and hit subscribe. Welcome to the Lead Creative Podcast, where we talk to creative industry leaders, influencers, and brands. We discuss the strategies that influence brand thinking and shape industries. Thought leaders and heads of agencies let us in on some of their thinking and insights. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. Enjoy the show, and please share and subscribe. Bonolo, thanks so much for joining us on The Lead Creative. I've been following your work and I really love some of the stuff that you've done with the collaborations that you've had with brands. And I'd love for us to delve a little bit into these. I know that one of the things you've said is that you started your design or at least creative work sketching while waiting for your mom, I think at work. It was, what would you tell that girl today about design and creative, seeing as that's kind of where you started?
Okay, so what I would tell that girl is just to keep on going. Wherever your passion leads you, even if it doesn't make sense, it will make sense later. I mean, like when you're young, you don't have so much information about the world and what you can do in terms of career, especially if you drawn towards creative things. So it does take time to really find your niche and understand, the industry as a whole. So I would tell that young girl to keep on drawing, sketching. Just follow it. It will make sense later. You'll connect the dots, and also the opportunities will come along the more you put work into it.
You began designing pieces for your home as part of your journey to building Lulasclan. At what point did you feel you could take the leap from agency to going solo?
I think for me, I've always wanted to, I've always been business driven because of that. Like just growing up and my mother selling, daily essentials in her converted garage and me just helping out over the holidays. So I think entrepreneurship has come very natural to me, but I reached a point in my short design career. I mean, I was in the industry for 5 years. I was still learning, but the good thing is that I learned at very good agency. So I learned to craft, I learned the design principles and everything to do with design. But I had reached a point where I was like, I need something that brings purpose, and there needs to be more than just earning a salary, doing what briefs for other brands. Also, when you work within the industry, maybe as a creative freelance designer or whatever, there's so many restrictions in terms of you follow the brief guidelines. The client wants this, and there's a specific way you need to do it. So for me, the rigid structures were stifling maybe what I was urging and had a longing to just explode and put my work out there. So, and also I had a lot of illustrations just sitting, and it pained me to see these illustrations, and I didn't know what to do with them, but I was like, you know what, I eventually want to build something sustainable. I want to build a business that's sustainable. So yes, I'm grateful for the opportunities of getting the work experience, and then now it was a matter of let me take everything that I've learned, all the guidance and mentorship from amazing creative directors, and let me start my own business because eventually I want to leave a legacy for my children. I want to document and tell stories for the world. So it was only fitting. I could no longer do the day job and then at night follow the passion. It was taking a toll on my body physically, mentally. So I was
Yeah.
like, let me go all in, risk it all. You've been comfortable. Yes, life has been set. It's been nice, but let's take this narrow, long road. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm very happy with the decision.
That said, though, Bonolo, a lot of people who work, in agencies and in other fields as well are constantly sort of doing something on the side or creating something on the side. And this something that you were creating on the side, or this passion project that you had, you built into a business. And what I'm kind of trying to establish is, what was the point when you felt this is it, or what gave you the confidence to make that jump?
Okay. I can never be a slave of two masters. Like business itself is demanding, work would be demanding. Like even
Sure.
now in my practice, I choose
Sure.
to focus on one project at a time instead of multiple things. So for me, it was more of like, let's narrow down the focus. Let's focus on this, nail it, understand it. You're gonna fail along the way, but it's part of it. So I was it's a dedication, it's a commitment, it's a perseverance. You need to go
Sure.
all in and not leave anything, out of the picture. So for me, I couldn't juggle the two. Other people can. You get serial entrepreneurs that can juggle
Yeah.
multiple
Yeah.
businesses. Yes, I could have easily
Sure.
stuck with my job, grew very well within the industry, and I would have been
Sure.
far, or I don't know, but I chose to just I want to focus on one thing and one thing. This is my life purpose because within my practice, it's not just about creating designs, it's about there's a spiritual element to it where even the clients that approach me, the stories that they share, it's like we working together holistically from design to
Yeah.
personal because we're
Sure.
building a relationship while we're building this project or
Yeah.
building the businesses that we want to. So for me, it's more about supporting other people's dreams. That's what the work does, and that is my calling to create bring when clients come to me, they come with a problem and they have a vision but they don't know where to start. For me, I realize that okay, in my profession, this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm here to help people realize their dreams and create really beautiful projects that can maybe propel them further within their space.
Since you started, you seem to have cracked the code to collaborating with big brands, something that many creative entrepreneurs really struggle with. Where did this start for you, these collaborations that you've been able to build? I mean, you've worked with Nando, Smeg, Mr. Price, Bulldog Gin. How did it start? Where did it start?
You know what? I believe for me it stems from wanting to learn more. So that has always been my intention. So I would send out multiple emails, and luckily with these collaborations, they reached out to me. But it's not a cracking of
Sure.
collaborations because every collaboration is different and it requires different things and you tailor your package differently depending on the scope of the project. So for some they were monetary, so meaning that there's a remuneration, and for some were more about
Yeah,
strategically where do I want to go with these brands, do I want to create a brand
absolutely.
partnership, and this is this a good brand alignment, is this going to propel you. It doesn't always have to be about money, and I think that's where creatives need to think out of the box. You need to think about
Yeah,
what are other vehicles in which this partnership can grow. Sometimes sometimes the collaborations can exclude money all in all, where it's both, it can still be both beneficial to both parties. So it's an understanding of where you are going, and also like where is this brand
Yes.
going, and then trying to marry the two. Because I think with most collaborations, the concept of money gets in the way, where as a creative, I need money for my work, but find other ways to generate that money. Look at it as, is it paid advertising? Am I building a relationship for future? Am I building a portfolio? And sometimes these collaborations can purely be for, I'm building my portfolio. I want a portfolio of really beautiful
Sure.
brands. And then when I'm ready and I'm confident in my skill and craft, that's when I can start, talking about billable income and remuneration, those type of, yeah, those stuff that we don't like talking about.
Yeah. So there are a couple of things there that I'd like us to unpack, and one of these things is the idea of sometimes building relationships and building a portfolio. Of course, understanding that you had been in the industry, in the advertising industry, for at least 5 years, so you had already you were used to making a good living, doing what you love, and now you jump out of that into your business, and you are almost rebuilding again. And a lot of creative people and people in other fields as well. I mean, I've experienced it in other ways, entrepreneurially, in one or two ways, where it's like a brand or a person, a place kind of calls you up and says they will give you exposure. This will be good for your brand. This will be good for your portfolio. And that, in some instances, feels exploitative. How do you balance that?
Yes, see, it's setting boundaries again. Like I think with business, you need a thick skin, and you also need something out of this. So
Yeah,
yes, it started out as exposure, and yes, it was rough. Give
sure.
it, like, out advice for a creative for the first year. Don't Yes, take in the exposure. It's fine. That is your monetary value at that point, just so that you can build enough
Sure.
foot traffic and clientele. From then on, it needs to be business. It needs to be purely business. And this is where, for
Yeah,
example, you can pair the exposure with something that's going to help propel your business. For instance, with some collaborations, I would be like, okay, let's say, for example, for the products that I sell through my online store, I would maybe structure a collaboration in
yeah,
a way that, okay, I can license you this pattern for free, provided that I am part of the production process. Or if I can't
sure.
manufacture the products for your stores using this pattern, I want to be part of the process. Why am I saying this? Because for me, I was like, I saw a gap in my business where, okay, I need to understand efficiency, systems, production. How else can I gain that training, free training? And that's how maybe
Sure.
sometimes I collaborate with people where I'm within the production line. It's helping me in my business. It's money that I would have spent in a seminar, in a workshop, in a lecture
Yes.
hall. And then, yes, we do need to live. So have your rate card, understand. And a rate card, for me, speaking for myself, it's not the same. It depends on the brand. And unfortunately, yes, we get scrutinized for this. No, everything needs to be standard. But I can't charge someone that's starting out a business looking for a pattern. I can't charge them like the premium
Yes.
amount. I can give them a package suited for that. But if, let's say, an Adidas
Yeah.
or well-known brand, a big brand comes in, that's where you need to be. Your business needs to be elastic. Understand the value of what you bring into your client, and don't take in exposure. If your portfolio showcases the good work and you've maybe gotten accolades for that, then exposure doesn't make sense at that point, because then you can come
Yes.
from a point of negotiation that, no, look at the work that I've done. They want that. Clients want that. Show them something, gain their trust, and then name your price. Be reasonable, be fair. Don't be greedy. So yeah, because also understand what are the other benefits. If I can't get X amount, can I settle for this amount, provided that it comes with one, two, three that can also assist and aid me get the next client. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think find a way to draw the line as to when exposure occurs and when is it time to bill, and also find a way of being part of, for lack of a better word, supply chain, and probably that's not the right word, but find a way of being part of the selling process or the sales process in some instances. What I'm aware of, though, with some of these brands is that there are very many restrictions working with some of these big brands. Like, you can't always say, make me part of the production, and they agree, or make me part of that and they kind of agree, right? Because there's this perception that there's a queue of people outside the door waiting for this kind of opportunity in a way, right? And of course, as a talented person, you're confident in your work that even if there's 1,000 people out there, no one has the Bonolo fingerprint on their work. So it's very unique and it's very distinct. What challenges, though, have you had working with these big brands? Because we see the really good side of it, where people have come out of it with really great work, with really great collaborations with some of the brands that you've also mentioned. But I imagine that starting out, being new in the field, there are also challenges. What are some of these challenges and how did you overcome them?
I think the one of the major, well, there's the major challenges is that sometimes through collaborations, the artist gets silenced as soon as the work is out and with it has been publicized, and then now it becomes they take ownership. They have these campaigns. Yes, they'll mention you the first two times, but then after that, that artist trail gets lost, so it becomes a thing of who designed this, or they take ownership. So that's one way the
Sure.
makers are not heroed. And that's something that is very important to me, even with the people that I work with, because it's so unfair. It's like you're taking credit for a piece of work that you don't have sole rights or license or 100% license to. So as a
Yeah.
creative, the thing is, I'm supposed to be part of this campaign because I gave you a piece, we work together. Mention that we work together. Don't silence it. Don't, now that you
Sure.
see that it's growing. And then the other thing would be in my industry would be lack of transparency, especially in terms of licensing patterns. So with
Yeah.
royalties, they get very tricky to track, especially if you are in the licensing field where you're licensing selling patterns. So sometimes, yes, these patterns come with licensing fees or royalties. So I'll get X amount for everything sold or every item sold. There is a lack of transparency where you are not physically there to witness every sale that gets in within their system, right? You only get every month, you get a sales sheet, which you don't. So, and remember, trust is earned. So, for creative, you always like, are they telling the truth? Are they not? So the lack of transparency becomes, and people that purchase the product, they, because they're so excited that you collaborated with this brand and these products are available, they will reach you as the creative. They'll say, I purchased the Bonolo Chepape one
Yes.
two three, and then it doesn't add up, the amount of people coming to you telling you and the amount of visibility of you witnessing this creation in every space,
Yeah.
but it doesn't correlate with the sales. So, and you need an
Makes
auditor,
sense.
you need those things within your contract, but it does get very expensive to bring in an auditor to audit their books, and it's really uncomfortable. As soon as you go that route, you
Sure.
know that the
Yeah.
relationship is damaged. So I'd say transparency and hiding creatives behind work has been my two major challenge, and maybe also clients not, because they get excited. You give them this creative, they
Yeah.
get excited, they now coming up with different campaigns, they're out of scope, versus the money that they've
Yes.
paid you. The fee that you charged was for an apple, and now there's bananas and the whole like vegetable garden. And when you come back to them and say, listen, now this pattern is on everything. Now you commercializing it. Now it's on merchandise. Now it's on one. It becomes another.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
never want to go back to setting up the agreement again and saying this was the scope. You went beyond. It's uncomfortable. It also breaks the trust and relationship. Yeah. So those big three. Yeah, not using creatives work within scope.
Yeah. If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. While sticking with the challenges, one of the things that is difficult at times for someone new in the industry, for an entrepreneur, for creatives, for people who are not established brands, is this challenge of how do you charge, how do you cost your work, and how do you cost it fairly. You've mentioned that you don't charge a small business the same as you would a big corporate, for instance. In instances when you're working with big corporates especially, how did you get to a point where you were confident enough to charge what you felt your work was really worth? How did you get to that point? Because I don't imagine that that's easy. What I keep hearing is that it isn't, and this is across the board, both locally and internationally.
Yeah, it isn't, and like I think pricing it's so important, and it's something that you craft even as you grow. It's like you miss that blind spot. Oh no, I should have considered one, two, three. So for me, it has been a learning in terms of, yes, you as when you enter the market, look at how much hours you spend. Just go the simple route. Look at how much hours you spend on a brief or on a project creating this item. Then look at all the touch points that this creative is going to touch. Is it going to roll out into publications, posters, banners, whatever? The bigger the touch, the more the touch points, then just understand that it's not going to be cheap, because now you're placing this on multiple things. Or you then charge a flat project fee where it encompasses all the deliverables that the client has mentioned, and then you charge a project fee taking into consideration the meetings, the revisions. And you can put, first, if you're starting out as a creative, maybe you can put like 250 per hour, 350 per hour, and look at those tiny things that steal your time, and then look at the creative, how much time you've put in there. But as you grow within the industry, yes, the same principle applies. But now remember, there's things like, it took me years to practice design. It took me years to practice textile design. And that is, I can't amount it to okay, because I can create a pattern in 30 minutes, but that pattern can have more value. I can create a pattern in a week or 2 months. And because I've taken the time to be more efficient, I've understood how I navigate my patterns, how I navigate my creative, and that took a lot of time. So for me to bill you 250 or 350 just because it took me 1 hour doesn't make sense. So that's where value also comes in. So for myself, I look at the scope as well, but then I don't charge per hour. I charge, yes, per touch point. I've got to figure out, there's a method to the madness, but also you need to be confident enough, and the confidence comes from you need something to show that, listen, you need to trust me when I charge you 50K or whatever case. that as a seasoned maybe designer, let's look at the accolades. I don't just design work just for money, just to design something. It needs to go somewhere. And even in my agreements, I do state this work will be entered into design competitions. So for the client, they understand that, okay, this, I'm trying to create a work of caliber here. And if it, and funny enough, or good thing is that, yes, the clients, it's always beneficial. It always opens doors. And, there's an accolade attached to the work that I create for them. So I look at that, and I show this to clients that, listen, I'm award winning, and this is how much I charge. And trust me, even if I charge you maybe 50K, I put on 150 hours in there you don't understand. So, and also giving the client a little bit extra, go above and beyond. Don't just look at, okay, I'm just gonna produce work of 10K. No, for yourself, go above. They ask for a pattern, give them a pattern and one, two, three. That's how you also solidify the relationships, where you go above and beyond just because you're passionate about the project that you are given. So saying no to projects that you're not passionate about is going to be important, because then you're overcharging clients for something that you're not immersed in. And that's where your personal consciousness needs to come in, where do good work, do great work, align with brands that value the same. And if it also helps the community, if there's like some social responsibility thing attached to it, then that's great. Then you also aligning your key purpose if that's what you're into. And that adds value to your work as well.
Now, Bonolo, coming to this, you've mentioned, I think, growth, or at least this idea of developing as you go. Now, one of the things that I mentioned earlier is, of course, your collaborations with big brands. What did you learn about yourself and working with big brands after you work with Nando's, Smeg, and any other brand that you worked with as a designer? At all these points, I'm sure that you grew, you evolved, you realized things about yourself, you found out a bit more about the industry. Which was the one project that you feel you grew a lot out of? And what did you learn from that about yourself?
Okay, the one project that I learned a lot was a client of mine, Palesa Mukubung. She has a fashion label called Manto. So I designed a pattern, a
Yeah.
textile design, and this pattern was acquired by H&M. So from a creative point of view, as a designer, I learned that, you know what, to stick to your core purpose and your style, and grow in it is quite important, that the world will see it, because this I was creating
Sure.
for another person, and it blew up. It literally blew up, and I was like, oh my gosh, so these patterns, as much as they're detailed, they are loved. So I grew confidence
Yeah.
from that, I'd keep on doing it, because all along I thought that, okay, the style's a bit too complicated, people don't get it, some people say there's too much colors. So for me, I
Yeah.
learned from that point, I learned, like, stick to your authenticity. Whatever designs you create in the style and signature that they come out with, it's important, and it will be seen. And yes, maybe next time, as you grow into your craft, don't be shy, because sometimes we think that the not so great work is not worth of being seen. But that's the thing. The one that you don't like, the client loves. And then, so understand that it's a process, that every piece is different, and give it a chance. Give the project a chance to live. And then I think with another project, Maker's Landing, sure,
Yeah.
it was that was the belly of the beast for me,
Sure.
a good one. So for me, with Maker's Landing, it taught me patience, taking guidance from others. As a solo
Yeah.
entrepreneur, you also get into the habit, and it's not always a good thing, of like this is a
Sticking
vision,
to your
guys.
ways. Yeah.
I want it like this. So, and
Yeah.
also being paid. I haven't worked in a team in such a long time. Being paid with someone you don't know. There was a lot of friction at the start. This one is creative. This one is creative, but in a verbal and research vibe. This one is creative in pictures, so it's marrying art and words together. So I learned a lot from my
Sure.
teammate. I learned a lot from the direction of others, and I grew. I think at the end of it, I was so impressed with the outcome of the work, and the relationships that grew out of that was so beautiful because even now we still working together and we want to take over the
Yeah.
world, like, because we were both
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
were both uncomfortable, myself and Co, and she knows this. We were both uncomfortable because we are so creatives get stuck in their own way of working. So this
Sure.
one will start
Yeah.
with one,
Yeah.
two, three, but this one starts there. So working with people, taking criticism
Sure.
is so important because you can also get comfortable while you're doing this award winning things, and then the next project that comes in, you're having big challenges because all
Yeah.
these people, they also want you to grow. So it
Sure.
also entails taking in the knocks and taking in the hard criticism, because you should understand that everyone wants this to be amazing. So until that point, you have to go keep on crafting, keep on designing, revisiting designs.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
that was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful one, because it's so easy to
Yeah.
give up and say, I don't want to be part of this project. But if you stick to it because you believe in it and you understand that, okay, but I'm growing. From last week, I've done 100 logos, but let's go. Let's go. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think out of that, I mean, I'm getting a lot out of that. I think one of the biggest things is find your signature and kind of commit to it, because that's kind of what distinguishes you in the market. And also this idea of patience in collaboration and sticking to a process one step at a time, because sometimes when you work alone, as you've just said, you almost have, once you get an idea, you have a vision for it and you kind of know where it's going. So you have a direction. And sometimes working with somebody else, this direction keeps changing and the vision also changes. So it's almost like literally taking it one step at a time, one puzzle piece at a time, and building on it and kind of collaborating that way. When looking at your work, I see this African design aesthetic being communicated in a contemporary way. And you've also mentioned something like this in another conversation, another interview that I saw. Is African design being received well across the globe since you started and went down this journey?
Yes, of course. It has been received very well from
Sure.
the global market because remember, it's up to us creators, maybe, championing the style. When you look at the Bauhaus style, it originates somewhere. It's people from there, that it's creators that came together or creators that saw a boom in this aesthetic. So with us in Africa, we didn't have that. So the more creators tell their stories, because this is home, these symbols become so natural to us that if we put it into work or creative pieces, it almost becomes like we championing this as an design style, an African design style or South
Sure.
African design style, and putting it into literature, putting it into historical books, into art books that other kids can learn from in our universities. Because I think when I was in varsity, we were being taught about mostly European artists and European designers and European
Sure.
design style. But there was nothing on African design
Yeah.
unless it was fine art and you're looking at Gerald Sekoto's artwork or Walter Batters. But there was never really a South African design as a category of a design style. And that's what I love. And that's when I say contemporary, or why I champion contemporary, is because also times have changed, right? Gone are the days that it's just
Yeah.
mosques and oranges and browns and you know the how you know how Africa has been seen, in the dark
Perceived, yeah,
Africa,
the
the
old perception
wildlife
of what Africa
Africa.
is, yeah.
Yes, so
Yeah.
I would love to champion the different facets of Africa. Africa can be luxurious, African can be clean and simple. Africa can also take a very modern twist and a very contemporary twist where its essence still remains African, but it's appealing to you, the global audience. It's a worldview of what Africa means because we are changing as well, and that narrative has to change. And we need to understand where we're taking this. So when I design it with that intention that it needs to feel like home, but with a global approach, so that anyone across the world can really find resonance in it because there's nothing unique under the sun, right? Picasso
Yeah.
used African elements in his work. So when you start looking at this, you start to understand that these artists traveled. So it becomes important for
Yes.
an African designer to also be exposed to what's going on,
Yeah.
what can I learn, and how can I bring it home, but without losing the essence of what I'm trying to communicate or the essence of my signature.
And I think that's a very important point, right? That the whole not losing your essence, even though you have global influences or global inspiration to your work. You've also mentioned this idea of home just now, and I want to delve a bit into that because your Bukamoso collection is inspired by the feeling of home, you've said. How do you infuse this feeling into each piece, especially when designing for international audiences or brands?
Okay, so my let me take you from maybe from the start when conceptualizing this collection.
Sure.
For me, I looked at
Yeah.
just typical scenarios of people that are maybe are born in Africa, but maybe have lived somewhere else, or they don't have a sense of home in terms of, oh, they're traveling. For example, travelers normally when they come to SA, they're like, it feels like home. And we love the people, we love the food. They want to take a piece of Africa to go back home with, or just because we are melting country actually of different people coming from different places. How do you make someone feel at home? How do you instill that feeling into a product? I looked at colors, I looked at shapes, I looked at my displacement in a new place where home is so far away from me. I relocated, and the only things that I could find a remembrance of home was through objects. It was through maybe my grandmother's
Yeah.
blanket. It was through this candle. It was through this cushion with a specific style. So I realized that, okay, sometimes we are attached to objects just because of the feeling that it gives us. It reminds us of something. It
Yes.
doesn't necessarily have to look like it, but we can just sit around a table and share a meal and say this feels like home, or cuddle in a blanket and say I remember the warmth of home. So this collection celebrates all those feelings that we personally have or associate with the concept of home, wherever home is. And that's what I
Yeah.
wanted the products to do, that it's not just about Africa or the place that you are born. It's about the feeling. Whatever object that makes you feel at home, brings you a sense of comfort, brings you a sense of joy, then that piece is home to you. So yeah,
Sure.
Bugamoso also is an optimistic outlook into the future. The name says it talks about the future where we are all traveling now. The world is getting closer. People are relocating. They misplaced. Some people don't have a sense of home because they don't have families. So it's just understanding different that people come from different backgrounds, and I left it open to the viewer to also associate their own feelings with the product. Not just saying this is home, but saying you are whoever
Sure.
finds a love and appreciation for this product, then surely it means something. So within the campaign, I asked different people, what does home feel like to you? What is home to you? And it was very interesting,
Yes.
the comments or remarks that I got from it, that yeah, and the stories with that came along with that.
You mentioned the desire to collaborate with Atang Chikare. How do you envision that collaboration working out? How do you envision it sort of taking shape? And what stories or themes would you want to explore?
That's the thing, right? Collaboration is not one-sided. So I and so to have a preconceived idea of how the collaboration is gonna go and what stories, that would mean I'm
Yeah.
taking a one-sided approach. But I've always loved the Dan Chikara's growth within the industry. He comes from a graphic design background. I love the interdisciplinary approach to his works, that he can easily, create graphic design, really beautiful graphic design works, but also translate those into, luxurious sculptural designs, fine art sculptural designs. So I love that approach, and I saw the marriage of, we have similar backgrounds, maybe in terms of design and graphic design, and applying it into different disciplines, and how do we now create an object or piece that marries the two. I think it's a conversation, if such an opportunity would come, that me and him would have to kind of from the ground up. I believe in collaboration that starts from the ground up, where we come with our minds, with a blank canvas, with no idea what we're going to do, but having a conversation of what are you, or learning each other, what are you passionate about, what do you want to say, and so forth, bouncing off ideas. It needs to be organic. I think also maybe speaking to collaboration, that's why a lot of people find collaborations very difficult, is that people come with preconceived ideas, or
Conceived
you
notions.
just
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
add a pattern. I don't believe in a collaboration where you just add a pattern on top of an object, because you've already got this figured out. This is not just a pattern that gets on top of something, but can we maybe discuss, are there other ways? Does a pattern come to life through 3D, whatever? So it's about exploring creativity when you're collaborating with a person, maybe
Yeah.
especially peer to peer. It's about starting things from the
Yeah.
ground and merging. He's a well seasoned designer, really. So there's a lot to learn from him as well, from my side, and just doing it out of pure love and passion for what we both, do.
If you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. Yeah, we've just, I mean, we've spoke about a lot of things, and among those things was, of course, African contemporary design, and in some instances, there's this idea of cultural appropriation, and I know that you've spoken about cultural appropriation as well elsewhere, where you offered a very nuanced, I think, thoughts around it. On that note, how do you suggest designers educate themselves to approach design in a respectful and informed manner, especially when inspired by cultures that are different from their own or cultures that they are unfamiliar with?
Okay. So yeah, it's a tricky one, because I've also, even being a cultural designer, I've been, an audience would
Yeah.
see a product that's inspired by another culture, and they say it's not spelled like this. It's actually, this is how you spell it. So then it becomes like you
Yes.
need to be aware, you need to educate yourself. But I always say, in my discipline, I don't look at resembling that culture 100%. for me, it showcases the
Sure.
similarities. The core of what I do on my pattern design, it showcases that we are one actually. As much as we are segregated because of cultural tribes,
Yeah.
cultural backgrounds, even language. So for me, it's more of like this symbol is similar to 1, 2, 3, and this is what they all have in common. I'm going to put them together because
Yeah.
I'm not trying to highlight one specific culture. I'm not trying to celebrate one
Yeah.
specific culture. I'm trying to show or educate people the similarities. For example, with the blanket throw collection that I did, limited edition throws, it was more about the object. It was about that we have something similar. When you look at a blanket, a woman goes through a journey where if they have lost a husband or they're grieving, they get put on this blanket. Or when
Yeah.
mothers bring in new life into this world and they hold a baby, they have a special blanket. Or when a woman goes through
Sure.
different things, like in Basotho, it's an act of gifting of two families, maybe in a marriage ceremony.
Yeah.
So the whole point was I drew different aesthetics, lines inspired by Basotho, dots inspired by Xhosa, different things, not to
Yeah.
tell the story of the tribe, but to tell the story of the significance of certain objects in our cultures that are similar, that we are the same, even though you can spot an Ndebele motif there or a Xhosa
Yeah.
motif there. Cultural appropriation all has to do with what are you championing as a creative. If you are theoretical and you're like, I want to document this to the T, then it becomes very important to be aware and cognizant of every single element that you use. Like the beadwork of Zulu people means so many different
Yes.
things. So be aware, even if that's the research approach and that's the story that you want to capture, the authentic story that you want to capture, then it's okay. So
Yeah.
I'm more of like cultural appropriation. I'm not against it because that's how we also evolve our style, our South African design style.
Is it so is it appropriate? I think what I've I mean there's this, right, there's this fine line between appropriation and what you've just described now, which is championing a culture based on kind of what you understand. Now, I think the question that comes up for me is this thing of how well do you immerse yourself, or should you immerse yourself in a culture in order to champion that culture in whatever it is that you do? Because I mean, I want to, let's say African cultures, for instance, right? We've seen them being 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 I suppose, showcased in ways that seem to be more appropriation than championing, or more appropriation than somebody who's immersed in the culture. How do you find that balance?
Remember, like the artist or creative will also put in within the body of work their own viewpoint, and that's maybe what we're
Sure.
seeing, where the yes, the artwork, as even if it was trying to champion Zulu people, because whatever tribe of people, the creative will always put a spin on it. They'll always leave their own interpretation. And I think that's where the fine line balance needs to come in, where what stays the same and what changes. But as a creative, to start off, you need to research, do your research, ask questions. It's a study approach. It's like you need to understand this culture. If you're going to be talking about the Zulu sandals and you want this pattern to be inspired by Zulu sandals, you need to understand the customs. You need to understand, go into deep detail, ask people,
Yeah. Yeah.
do the
Yeah.
research, and then communicate that. But also, again, are you trying to depict it, champion it just as it is? Then it's fine. Leave the design. Don't tamper with it. But are you trying to showcase your expressive viewpoint in your messaging? Then that's the you need to decide what are you trying to do, because I think you can, as a creative. I think creative creativity is about self-expression. So even if I'm Betty, how I view my Betty culture, even though I understand it, will come out differently in my work. Maybe I'm inspired by just the colors. It doesn't follow the
Yeah.
form of the dresses. It doesn't follow one, two,
Sure.
three, but the rig
Sure.
rag is there, So yeah, but that's how we also evolve. But that's why you need to understand, it's important that as the work evolves or the style evolves, it still remains true. Is it the lines that you keep consistent? As Basotho blanket, for example, the diagonal lines, the horizontal lines are very important. So if you're gonna create a blanket that is inspired by Basotho people, keep those lines. That is what the signifier. So understanding what signifies this culture is important, because then it will tell you this is the element that remains constant and everything else can change around it, because this is the element that really links this piece to Basotho people, because the key meaning or significance or story, this is what it holds. So it's a research approach. You don't just do it, otherwise and you don't just copy it. That's the other thing. There's a
Yeah.
reason why
Yeah.
Ndebele people, or whatever art styles, they put circles next to one, two, three. There's a reason. You need to find out that unless you're going an expressive, what's it called? Forgot the word, but yeah, expressive route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Bonolo, with everything that you've learned up to this point working with big brands, what advice would you give to other creatives who are looking to collaborate with big brands, who are looking for some of the opportunities that you started out looking for with, the cold emails that you were sending, and then applying for some of the collaborations and partnerships that you had, that you then were able to get at the end of it? What advice would you give?
I think the advice is just, what, keep doing what you're doing, put it out there. There's social media now, there's digital platforms. You can create a website, put your work there. But also, like, I think it's important to understand that the more, and this is where there is no book for it, the
Sure.
more work you put into what you do, the more the world, the universe, whatever you want to call it, will bring those opportunities to you. Because it's very surprising that you can get an email because you had a mood board, have a vision, have a mood board of all the different brands that you would love to work with. And then do the job, prepare yourself so that if that opportunity arises, you'd be very surprised that an email pops in. It might not be the collaboration that you're looking for, but it can help you start somewhere. And also, don't be afraid to collaborate with your peers, because it's not just about the big brands. The big brands, they look for you because they've seen you somewhere. Even if you do the cold calling and email, they receive
Yeah.
hundreds
Yeah.
of emails every day. So make sure that you present yourself as a brand, number one, your social media, that your work is up there.
Yeah.
Document every single thing, every small, big, local project that you're doing, even with the friend. Document it, publish it online on social media. Eventually, they will find you. And also, don't be afraid to do paid advertising as an artist or creative. You can still do that. You don't need to collaborate first with a brand to market yourself. So understanding how you market yourself as an artist, as a designer, that's very important, because at the end of the day, all these steps are there to aid you, so that they become aware of you, so that someone can see it. And good thing this someone knows the director of 123. That's how these things work. You need to, the more you in front of people, people are watching. And I think that's the beauty of technology nowadays, or social media. People are watching. Enter competitions, locally, international competitions, enter them, try your luck. Sometimes it can be, you could feel like they're so with they're so far from your reach, or you're not comfortable yet because they're talking about textiles and there's a research part and then there's sustainability. Just do it
Yeah.
anyways. You never know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that would
So
be the
put
one.
yourself out there, put
Put
yourself
yourself
out there as
out
much as
there, market
possible,
yourself,
and explore
and
all the
and
opportunities.
explore and
Yeah.
invest in that. Look at yourself as like, I'm gonna invest in this. Get the right tools. Also, I'm gonna invest in, doing a paid marketing thing every day, doing videos, the works. There's
Yeah.
content there. So yeah.
The final question, Bonolo, with everything that you've said and everything that you've shared, which is all really, really insightful, and thanks for that. Who is someone in any industry that you admire, and what's the one question that if you met them, you would ask them about their approach to work and life?
Um. Oh boy. When you ask that question now, the mind goes blank. Um,
Yeah.
okay, I would say, okay, there's two. Can I mention two?
Sure,
Because it's
sure.
two
Sure,
disciplines.
absolutely.
I think from a business side, I really admire the Batu brand, the South African Batu brand. So it would be more about how did they scale? How do you make sure that your business is scalable, like from the product production side of things, and
Sure.
because sometimes with limited capital funding, what are the other alternatives that we can bring or gain momentum in our businesses
Yeah.
or sales and things like that. So that would be more business sided. And then another one would also be I really love the fashion designers, equally Tebe Magago and Laduma Makosa. From
Yeah.
Laduma Makosa would be like, how do I find that in the space that I'm in, that we constantly need to justify the value or the pricing of our products, even though we're trying
Yeah.
to make everything in SA and it's very
Sure.
expensive, and it brings our costs so high that we have to also now put a markup and things like that. So how,
Sure.
and sometimes the South African market doesn't understand. They think that you're just trying to price an item very expensive, not understanding
Yeah.
what goes behind it. So for my side is that, how did he get confidence in creating a luxury brand, sticking to his pricing, even when probably everyone told him that no, it's too expensive or whatever, because that's what you get also. And I
Yeah.
think we need to also not shy away from I think for us, adding value into items, maybe black people, it becomes questioned because not a lot of people are within that luxury segment, or, we don't have that
Yeah.
experience. So, and then the other thing would be, to him, Laduma would be like, were there any challenges or critical? How did he overcome the critical, maybe questions of why didn't he market his product to the local audience first before the global or the international audience? Because we do experience that where like our products are sought after by more international people than
Yeah.
local
Yeah.
people. But as soon as you
Sure.
mention that, no, I don't actually sell in SA, it becomes like, but
Yeah.
you're making these here. But my buyers are not buying here. So I'm going where
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
target market is. So how did he navigate that?
Absolutely.
Especially with products that become very expensive for our market, our SA
Yeah.
region, or whatever, to
Yeah.
consume. So yeah, those would be the
Yeah.
questions
Yeah.
surrounding
Yeah. It
business.
sounds like it would be a long lunch with
It would.
Laduma.
It would. I have a lot of questions. I'm just vomiting because now I'm like, and that
Yeah.
product, how did he solve this? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
And then I think
there's
the last one was Tebe Makuku that you mentioned.
yes, yes. Oh, Tebe would be, yeah. finding out his journey in the fashion. Besides his talent, he's talented, he's amazing, but like I'm
Yeah.
sure, like how did he navigate that space in terms of
Sure.
growth, getting the opportunities,
Sure.
yeah, he just finding out more in terms of his experience within the fashion space and design as well, design
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
And I think what I find interesting about that question particularly is that I see similarities in his journey and yours in the sense of the ability to collaborate collaborate, I suppose, across various brands and leverage those collaborations. And we haven't really spoken about leveraging those collaborations. And I suppose the last question to you is, you can go from one collaboration with Nando's and Smeg, Nando's to Smeg, to Mr. Price, to H&M, to Bulldog Gin. But how do you leverage one collaboration to grow into the next? How do you do that? Is
You
that something you do through media? Is that something you do through your portfolio? How do you do that? I think that is the question. That is probably one of those questions that I would ask you, because we see people collaborating with these big brands, but sometimes in more instances than not, a lot of these collaborations become one-hit wonders. You hear about that one person the one time, and you never hear about them again. And you're like, oh yeah, I remember Bonolo. She collaborated with Nando. I wonder what happened to her. But then you grow from Nando's to Mr. Price, from Mr. Price to Bulldog Gin. How do you leverage these, and what's the stepping stone from one to the next? Just finally and very briefly.
Okay. I think the quote that sums it up is that you're only the best. You as good as your last job. So it's
Sure.
important to, even if let's say you hit a big collaboration, how does it propel your growth? Use it to propel your growth. Showcase,
Sure.
tell the story behind the collaboration consistently. Document it through your website, but also, most importantly, I enter awards. I would enter awards like glories. It's strategically so,
Sure.
because the brands that I love to work with are there. They're watching. They're also entering their own
In those spaces.
campaigns
Yeah.
or projects through agencies or whatever. So I enter that to showcase the work that I've done. And you get ranked. You get
Sure.
ranked as a designer, you get ranked as one, two, three. There's a ranking system. The deal is stay on top of that rank. Enter the work, the collaborations that you've done so that you are ranked well. But also to expose yourself. It's a paid marketing. Lorries are very expensive, but I think every creative,
Yeah.
even if you're doing a side project or side collaboration, enter them, because what it's doing, you are at the forefront of
Sure.
people, the decision makers, maybe an essay of people that are working with probably the brand that you want to work with. So do that. Don't look at the results, whether you win or not, but do it as a practice of, like, at least that you are remaining visible to the right people, because you can
Sure.
have a big following but not be visible to the right people. Your key people are people
Yeah,
that
and I
are
think
working
this idea of
with them.
visibility keeps coming up. This idea of visibility keeps coming up
Yeah,
quite a lot, and I think
yeah.
exposure and visibility you've mentioned quite a number of times. Bonolo, thank you so much for making the time. It was a really insightful conversation, and whenever possible, we'll try to get your questions answered by Batu,
Please find it.
Laduma, and Tebe.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Please get them in,
Yeah.
interview them one day. Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Awesome. No, yeah, we'll make a plan. We'll make a
Yeah.
plan. Thanks so much, Bonolo. Thank you for listening to The Lead Creative. Did you get one insight that's worth sharing from this episode? Please share it with your network or your friends. Pop me some of your ideas and innovative finds on Twitter on @Mongezi. This podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find me on mongezi.com.